Hello everyone. This is our first meeting in our first discussion uh, with regards to your module. So, to start with, we have here our first topic, the general principles of income taxation. So, first, what is taxation? So, taxation is the process by which the sovereign, through its lawmaking body, imposes burdens for the purpose of raising revenues to carry out legitimate objects of the government. So, this is the process of the government in order to generate revenues. Now, in order for the government to carry out legitimate objects of the government, no, to raise revenues for public purpose. So, amo na sa taxation. So, it is the income generating process of the government. No, so imposition of taxes. So, what is or what are taxes? So, what is a tax? The enforced contributions. No, it is an enforced contribution. So everybody must pay their taxes. Now, levied by the lawmaking body of the state for the support of the government in all the public needs. So taxes ang nagabuhi sang isa ka government or sang isa ka country. Then what are the three inherent powers of the state or of our government? First is the police power, the power of promoting public welfare and regulating the use of liberty and property. So it is the power of promoting public welfare, that is police power. Second is the power of taxation. So the power which raises revenue for the expenses of the government. So that's the second inherent powers of the state. Then third is the power of eminent domain. That is the power to acquire private property for public purpose upon payment of just compensation. So example of this power of eminent domain is, for example, the government or the LGU wants to have a road widening project. So in order for the road to be widened, of course, you have to buy those lands, no, mga balay nga gintindugan nga maigo sang road widening. So to exercise the power of eminent domain, those mga households nga maigo sang road widening will be their private property will be acquired by the government by giving just compensation, no, that is for the purpose or for public purpose. Amo na siyang road widening para mag-less ang traffic. So that's the example of exercising the power of eminent domain. So to review, the three inherent powers of the state is the police power, no, that the power of promoting public welfare, power of taxation, the power which raises revenue, then the power of eminent domain, that is to acquire private property for public purpose upon payment of just compensation. So what are the purposes of taxation? First, the primary purpose of taxation is for revenue or fiscal purposes, that is to provide funds or property with which to promote general welfare and protection of its citizens. So that is the primary purpose of taxation, revenue and for fiscal purpose. The secondary is the regulatory purpose or the non-revenue purpose, that taxation is employed as a device for regulation or control. So there are something activities or items that are being taxed, no, for regulation purposes, no, mga import duties na customs duties, no, it's an example of a regulatory purpose para hindi kita magtama ka import export, no, para tangkilikin natin ating sariling atin. So amo na siya mga purposes naman sa imposition of taxes. Then the effects, no, of this regulatory purpose: promotion of general welfare, no, for regulation, reduction of social inequality, economic growth, and protectionism. Then theories and basis of taxation. So first theory is the necessity theory, that is the importance of taxation, that is to preserve the state's sovereignty, no? For in order for the state to continue its existence, we have this necessity theory, no, or the importance of taxation. So taxation preserves the state's sovereignty. So tungod sa taxation, the government can exist, no, and its people. So without taxes, the government would be paralyzed for lack of power to operate it. So amo na siya ang taxes ang nagabuhi sa aton yung sovereignty. Then second, or sa aton yung sovereign, second is the lifeblood theory, or that is the theory of taxation. It used to continue to perform the government's basic function of serving and protecting its people. Without taxation, the government cannot perform its basic function of serving and protecting its people. Okay, wala siya revenue. Then it gives tangible and intangible benefits. So this is where your taxes go. Then benefits protection theory, that is the basis of taxation. So taxation is described as a symbiotic relationship whereby taxes are paid in exchange of the benefits and protections that the citizens get from the government. So the benefits protection theory, the people contributes their taxes to the government, no? Then the government in exchange will serve its people, no, by providing services and intangible and tangible benefits to its people who are contributing those taxes. So there is a symbiotic relationship between the people and the government. So that explains the benefits protection theory. Okay, to review, the theories and basis of taxation are first, the necessity theory, or the importance of taxation. Now, that is to preserve the state's sovereignty. Second is the lifeblood theory, or the theory of taxation, that is and which explains that taxation helps the government, no, perform its basic function of serving and protecting its people. Then for the benefits protection theory, the basis of taxation, there is a symbiotic relationship between the government and the people. And let's proceed to the scope of taxation. So we have COPS now for our acronym. So the power of taxation is the most absolute of all the powers of the government. So among the three, the power of taxation is the most absolute. So what is the scope of, or what are the scope of taxation? One is comprehensive. It covers all people. So there is no exemption as to payment of taxes since the scope of taxation is comprehensive. It covers all persons, all businesses, and all professions. There is no exemption as to imposition of taxes. Second is unlimited, so there is absence of limitation. But in our discussion further, we will have to tackle the inherent and constitutional limitations of taxation. But as to here, as it was presented, one of the scope of taxation is it is unlimited. Then third is plenary, since it is complete. So it is comprehensive, no? Number one, gabalik siya sa number one, and it is the supreme, since it is the most absolute of all the powers of the government. So that's the scope of taxation. Take note of the acronym. Then essential elements or characteristics of tax. No, let's take note of that. The essential elements and characteristics of tax. Number one, it is an enforced contribution. So you are being enforced, or there is a compulsory payment of taxes for each people, no, composing the state. Then it is generally payable in money. Of course, you pay your taxes in terms of money, so you cannot pay property, no, in payment of your taxes. You cannot pay what else? Real property, personal property. You cannot pay that, but you have to pay money, no, for taxes. Third, it is proportionate in character. So proportionate in character. Higher income means higher taxes, lower income means lower taxes. No, so you cannot pay if you have higher income, you pay low taxes. No, that's not. If you have lower income, you pay high taxes. No, it's not. So it is proportionate in character, and it is levied on persons, property, or rights. It's not only impose sa mga tao, but it is also imposed on property. No, mga real property, we pay property taxes and rights, no, privilege taxes, excise taxes. Now, it's not only levied on persons, but also on properties or rights. Then, it is levied by the lawmaking body of the state, that is the, we have three, the judicial, I forgot kung ano tawag sila, but I know you do. The judicial, the executive, and the, I forgot sa isa, no? I'm not good at, hindi ko sagad sa mga lawmaking, mga sina. I think madumduman ko lang along the way. So it is levied by the lawmaking body of the state, and it is levied for public purpose. No, it's for everybody's benefit. No, so that's the essential elements or characteristics of tax. So let's go on the aspects of taxation. So number one is levying or imposition of tax. So that is the function of Congress, no, to levy and to impose taxes. Ilan na obra, the Congress or the lawmaking body. Then the assessment or determination of the correct amount, that's the function of the executive. No, executive, judiciary, and the Congress. No, diin siya I forgot class. I forgot. Sorry. But number second is the assessment or determination of correct amount, no, computation of taxes, ara na sa BIR, no, executive. Then collection of tax, iyaman ka executive, and that's the Bureau of Internal Revenue's function na collection of taxes. So first is the levying and imposition. Second is the assessment. Assessment is the determination of the tax payable, no, tax amount, and determination of the correct amount. Then the three is the collection. So pasunod sa first is gin-levy siya, gin-impose. Second is gin-identify ang amount. Then third is it is being collected. So muna siya ang aspects of taxation. So number one, ara na siya ang function ni Congress. The assessment and collection is ara na sa executive or under the Bureau of Internal Revenue. That's the aspects of taxation. Next is the nature and characteristics of taxation. As what I have said earlier, that there is also characteristic of tax, and there is also characteristics of taxation. So it is different, tax and taxation. So take note of that now when you study for your exams. First, it is inherent in sovereignty. Can enforce contribution in the absence of law. So inherent, ara na sa iyadaan, no, naka-embed na sa iya, no, sa taxation nga it can the government can enforce contribution, no, without the law. Kay ara na, no, so kung sang ginbata siya, ara na sa iyadaan, no. Third is it is I remember legislative, executive, and the judicial, and that it is the here legislative and character cannot be exercised by the executive and juridical branches. No, only the legislative branch of the government ang maka-exercise ang power of taxation, and that is the Congress. Sila lang na iyang makahimo sang law about taxation. So legislative and character, then subject to inherent, constitutional, and contractual limitations. Okay, so since naka-inherent na siya, no, it can be enforced in the absence of law, and it is also subject in inherent limitations man, no, of course, and constitutional and contractual limitations. Now, to review, no, the nature and characteristics of taxation is, first, it is inherent. Second, it is it is legislative in character, and it is subject to inherent constitutional and contractual limitations. Take note of the acronym. So agencies performing governmental functions are tax exempt unless expressly taxed. Why? Government agencies are not subject to tax. Why? The government cannot tax itself. Okay? Kaya nagabalik-balik lang na. So even though it is a agency, it generates income. No, for example, the PRC can generate income, no, from the examination fees, mga accreditation fees, and all other agencies of the government. They are not being taxed since they are government agencies, no. So magabalik ko taksa na karon niya si PRC ni government. So it is a government agency, so balik-balik lang. So they are exempt, no. They are tax exempt. Agencies performing proprietary functions are subject to tax unless expressly exempted. So those agencies, no, performing proprietary, no, they are performing for profit, are subject to tax unless expressly exempted. GOCCs, the government-owned and controlled corporations, or also known as the GOCCs, performing proprietary functions are subject to tax. Now, those government-owned and controlled corporations performing proprietary, meaning they are incurring profit. Now, they are generating profit. They are subject to tax. However, the following are granted tax exemptions. So the GSIS, the SSS, the PhilHealth, the Philippine Charity Sweepstakes, and the local water districts are tax exempt. Tax exempt. These are GOCCs, but they are tax exempt, and they are also performing proprietary functions. But of course, we are now in train law. Train law, nakita class. The Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office is already taxable. They are not exempted na. So I just include that here, no, since yes, it was already exempt. Ano na, it's taxable na si PCSO. Okay, so classification of taxes, we have here as to scope, ang gina-cover ya, first is national, imposed by the national government, and local, imposed by the local government. So we pay national government taxes, and there are also local taxes that are being imposed. So mga local taxes, I think mga example sa mga local taxes, cedula, no, that's tax man, no, if you are paying community tax, cedula, so it's a tax, no, imposed locally. Then as to subject matter or object, if it's personal, poll, or capitation, it's tax of a fixed amount imposed upon individual residing within a specified territory. So yes, there is an example for this tax of a fixed amount. So there is a fixed amount that you are paying if you are residing within a specified territory. Then property, tax imposed on property in proportion to its value. Mga property tax na tax ang duta. So it is based on the amount na. Then excise tax or privilege tax on certain rights and privileges. Example of this is seen products or imported goods. So imported goods, kamahal sang tax na. So ang tax na gina-impose na is called the excise tax. And other privileges, donors tax, and estate tax. Estate tax is imposed on the transfer of property, transfer of the descendants' property. Amo na siya ang pag-transfer sa mga property sang napatay to its heirs. And sa donors tax naman is amo na siya ang tax on the transfer of the property nga gin-donate ni donor kay donee. So amo na siyang example sa aton excise tax, no, as to subject matter or object. Third is as to who bears the burden. Direct taxpayer cannot shift to another. So meaning, pag impose ni kay direct taxpayer, hindi yan na ma-impose to another person. So he is the sole taxpayer of the tax being imposed to him. No? Income taxes, that's direct. That's example of direct taxes. Then second is indirect. So indemnify himself as at the expense of another. The best example of indirect taxes is the VAT, the value added tax. Why? Nagbakal si business owner kay supplier. So nagbakal si business owner kay supplier, ang ginbakalya is na-impose na may VAT siya nga dala, no? If makita niyo na sa resibo, if VAT registered ang both si supplier kag si example si business owner is they are VAT registered. Ining si business owner ginbaligya ya kay consumer ang goods. So gin-transfer gato ang VAT nga ginpatong ni supplier sa goods nga ginbakal ni business owner, ginpasaya ang VAT kay consumer. So ginbayad ni consumer, that is VAT inclusive. Then ang VAT nga ginbayad will be remitted by the business owner to the Bureau of Internal Revenue. So ginpasaya ang burden kay consumer. Sino kaluluoy? Si consumer kay siya nagabayad sang VAT. Ang tawag da sang VAT nga ginbayad ni consumer is the output tax. Ang tawag sang VAT nga ginpatong ni supplier kay business owner is the input tax. So amo na siya class ang example ya, no. Hindi ta lang na pagpadalman kay wala patas, no, you're done with your VAT, no, business taxes. So but it is the best example of indirect tax. Then next is as to determination of fixed amount, a specific tax of fixed amount by number, standard or weight or measurement. So there is a fixed amount na for that certain tax, no? Excise tax on distilled spirits, there is a fixed amount for that, wines and liquors. And second is ad valorem, tax of fixed proportion of the value of property. So for example is the real estate tax. So that is based man on the value of the property. Kung dako siya, kung pila ka square meters, dako man ang tax ang ginabayaran mo. If gamay, of course, gamay man lang. Then third, as to purpose, to kagina, primary, fiscal or revenue purpose. Then secondary, regulatory, special or sumptuary purpose. Then next is as to graduation or rate. For proportional, tax based on fixed percentages of amount. So may fixed siya nga rate. For example, ang VAT is 12%. Kung gamay ang iya nga base, gamay man ang VAT. Okay, fix mo ang 12%. If dako ang base, so dako man ang VAT. No? Kaya example, ang 1,000 pesos subject to VAT of 12%, so that's only pila? 120. Then if 1 million naman ya tax base, of course, dako man ang iyang VAT, no? 1 million times 12%. So man na siya ang proportional. As to progressive naman niya, tax rate of which increases as the tax base or bracket increases. Example of this progressive tax, progressive is the income tax table. No, if bracket na siya class, first 0 to 250,000 ang imong net income, you are not subject, you are exempt to income tax. 250 if nagsulod ka sa more than 250 but not 250 to 400,000, there is a fixed plus percentage na fixed amount, something 8,000 plus 25% in excess of 250, diba mo na class. So that's progressive. Gadako ng income, gadako man ang imo nga tax nga ginabayaran, but it's not fixed ya. Kay kung fixed naman yang percentage nga gina-multiply naton, it would be proportional. But progressive, gamay mo income, gamay mo tax, dako imo income, gadako man imo tax. Ang regressive is suli sang progressive, no? And it does not apply here in the Philippines. So the rate of which decreases as the tax base or bracket increases. It does not apply here in the Philippines. What we are having here in our tax law is the proportional and the progressive. Okay, then as to taxing authority, the national, those are taxes imposed under the National Internal Revenue Code collected by the Bureau of Internal Revenue. And second is the municipal or local that is imposed by the LGUs. Okay, so that's the classification of taxes. Next is the elements of a sound tax system. Take note of this class. First element of a sound tax system is first fiscal adequacy. So taxes or the sources must be adequate. So sources must be adequate. So ang ginakuhaan natin sa taxes dapat enough siya, no, to cover the expenses of the state. Then third is theoretical justice or equality. Tax should be proportionate. So we follow the ability to pay principle. Of course, no. If you have lower income, then you have to pay, of course, lower income kay lower tax. Kay kung i-impose mo na karon sa mga lower income earners ang mga dagko nga taxes, they cannot pay. They don't have the ability to pay. Lacking man gani sila the ability to have higher income, i-impose mo pa sa ilang dagko nga taxes, so that would be very ng detrimental na sa mga na low income earners, no? So we have the theoretical justice or equality. Then third is the administrative feasibility. So law must be capable of effective and efficient enforcement. So hindi siya tanto complicated to impose, no, ang aton nga tax system. So it must be administered, no, properly and effectively, and of course efficiently. So to review, to take note, the elements of a sound tax system, we have the FEA, no, as our acronym, the fiscal adequacy, the equality or theoretical justice, and the administrative feasibility. Okay, then limitations on the state's power to tax. So number one is its inherent limitation. So those are limitations that are not embodied in the Constitution, or those that are not mentioned in our Constitution. Then second is constitutional limitations, those that are expressly found in the Constitution. Ang mga limitations on the state's power to tax. So you have here the progressive system. So progressive system, emphasis on direct taxes, no? Muto kagina example of direct taxes is the income tax. So income tax is, we follow the progressive system sa income tax, as what I have said, that if gamay pa imo income, so you pay lower taxes, samtang ga amat-amat dako, gamat-amat man dako ang imo taxes nga ginabayaran. Then regressive system, more indirect taxes imposed. Then regressive tax rates which decreases as tax base or bracket increases. And again, we do not observe that here in the Philippines. Kay di ta na to karon ma-serve ang aton nga sound tax system nga fiscal adequacy. Kay mag-amo sina, the revenues of the state will not be enough, no, for its expenses. Okay, then what are inherent limitations? So inherent limitations levied for public purpose. So we pay taxes, no, for public purpose. So do we follow that? I don't know with our government. Second, exemption from taxation of government entities. So the government cannot tax its own self. That's it. That's one of its inherent limitation. Third is non-delegation of legislative power to tax, since ang power to tax is only exercised by the legislative branch or the lawmaking body of the state, that's the Congress. So it will not be delegated to the House of Representatives, it will not be delegated to the mayors, governors, but the legislative itself ang maka-exercise ang power to tax, and it is they cannot delegate that power. Third is it is territorial, and of course it covers the Philippine territories, then international committee, as what I have said kaginang, there is a mutual relationship, no, or understanding between countries as to imposition of taxes to foreign nationals or foreign people who are here, and Filipinos who are in the foreign country. Then this principle limits the authority of the government to effectively impose taxes on a sovereign state and its instrumentalities, as well as on its property held and activities undertaken in that capacity. So international law dictates peace and harmony among states. So because of this international committee, we are observing peace and harmony between states. Hence, no state shall assert superiority over the other by imposing taxes. So if you impose taxes, if the Philippine government impose taxes to foreign nationals who are here, then the foreign countries will also tax the Filipino nationals who are there in their country. So, di ta na gusto matabo, no, since relationships will be compromised, no, between countries. Then, yeah, peace and harmony must be observed. Then, constitutional limitations. These are limitations that are expressly found on the Constitution. Number one, due process of law. Of course, as we have, as the government impose taxes, it must follow due process of law. When ayan nagapataka lang sang impose ang taxes, they have presina ang train law, no, it undergoes a lot of hearings sa Congress, no, before it was signed by the president to become a law. So it follows the due process of law. Second is equal protection of laws. Of course, ka-state ina sa aton constitution, no, equal protection of the laws, then non-impairment of the obligation of contracts, non-imprisonment of non-payment of poll tax. So far, wala pa may na priso sa non-payment of poll tax. Poll tax. So if you want to know, you can search poll tax is community tax, I think. Then rule of taxation must be uniform and equitable. Of course, it must be fair and equitable. Then exemption from real property tax of charitable institutions, churches, parsonages, or convents, mosques, and non-profit cemeteries, and all lands, buildings, and improvements exclusively used for religious or charitable purposes. So real property, they are exempt from real property tax only. Take note of that. No, it might come sa inyong examination. So take note nga real property tax lang ang exempt ang mga religious or charitable institutions. Then exemption from income taxes naman niya. Exemption from income taxes, real estate taxes, and customs duties of non-stock, non-profit educational institution like the Fellowship of this College. It is a non-stock, non-profit educational institution. Therefore, we do not pay income taxes, we are not paying real estate taxes, and we are not paying customs duties because it is stated in the Constitution that the non-stock, non-profit educational institutions are not subject to those taxes mentioned. And improvements being used actually directly or exclusively for educational purposes. So proprietary educational institution, including those cooperatively owned, may likewise be entitled to such exemption subject to limitations provided. So they can avail this exemption, but it is subject to limitations. But if you are a non-stock, non-profit educational institution, as what the Constitution provides, We do not pay those taxes, income taxes, real estate taxes, and customs duties. And that ends our first discussion about the general principles of income taxation. So for this prelim, we have to tackle the all theories. So we don't have computation pa for this prelim. So we are like somewhat like medyo ano pa, theories patatanan. So I don't know if you find it boring or not. But yes, we don't have computation for this term. So second discussion will be uploaded. So links will be sent. And okay, so I'll end here. Thank you very much and have a nice day ahead.